Okay, let's go ahead and get started here. Welcome everybody to the AI for Operators event series. I'm Mike Stone. I'm here with my co-host Nick Maloney. We are the co-founders of the Gnar company. It's an AI native software partner, and we started this event series because we've been chatting with a lot of business leaders that are really struggling to find ROI on their AI initiatives. Um, so we found that if we built a workshop more geared towards this type of user, a business leader who's non-technical, and help them really learn how to leverage this tool, that they could use that knowledge to help guide their own initiatives internally. So in session one, we taught folks how to use frameworks for effective prompting, so how to communicate effectively with Claude. But that's going to bring us to a new friction point that we're going to cover today to help folks eliminate that problem of having to repaste a lot of context when prompting. Um, let me get going here. All right, so our agenda for today, we're going to primarily focus on projects in the first half. So talking about what a project is and how it can help solve some of the problems that arose in the prompting framework that we taught last class. And then we'll do a demo where we'll build a project from scratch. Then we're going to get in the second half into workflows and begin to talk about automation. We'll do a demo of, in this case, a weekly ops report that you can run. We're going to do it twice if we have the time to do it. And then before we end, I want to talk a little bit about the ROI math and how to think about generating positive returns on your AI investments, which is a hot topic because, as you've either experienced or seen in the news, a lot of folks are not doing a great job. A lot of businesses are really failing to capture a positive ROI from their AI initiatives. All right. So last session, we learned the prompting framework that just rolls off the tongue called RCTFC. This stands for role, context, task, format, and constraints. Those are the inputs that you want in your prompt. If you used that this week, you probably noticed something pretty annoying in that you have to keep repeating yourself. So every new chat, you paste in some context, you explain the same company background, you restate the same preferences. And if you run into that, it's a sign that you've outgrown the single conversation. So today we're going to fix that and we'll build a system you can run. You can think about projects as a persistent workspace. So this is a dedicated folder where Claude always has your company context. So you can put all sorts of different documents into a project. We'll talk about that a little bit more now. You can write custom instructions. And every time you start a conversation within a project, you'll share that same base context. So this has a key shift of, instead of telling Claude about your business every time, you can just tell it once. Or if you've been frustrated by the output that you're getting with the generic prompts, this is really going to solve that problem. The analogy that we keep coming back to is to think about Claude as a new employee at your company. You want to hire an employee and on day one, hand them a folder with your company overview, your services, your pricing, your ICP profile, a note about how you like things written, all of your company handbook. And now every task you give to that new employee starts with that foundation. And that's really what we're doing with projects. Okay, when we think about what to put into projects, there's really these four things. So you'll put documents into your projects. Again, these are things like your service descriptions or your pricing sheets, case studies, ICP profiles, your brand guides, past proposals. The list goes on. All sorts of documents go into your project. You also add custom instructions. This is where we'll put a lot of that RCTFC framework. We will put in the role, preferences, tone, recurring tasks, things that Claude should always do or things that it should never do. We'll add business context around who customers are, the problems that you solve, things that differentiate you from competitors. And this is all going to help make the output more specific to you rather than generic language. And then finally, we can put in examples like sample emails or writing examples that are really a key unlock to get the output written in the way that you would. A way to do this is I guess we'll just start slow here. So we don't want to upload everything on day one. We'll start with what's relevant to the first use case, and then we can just add more over time. And with that, let's get into our first demo here. Um, In this demo, we're going to be working on a business development project that we will build from scratch, but you'll be able to see that I can add a very generic prompt like qualify this lead and draft a response. And because we're using the project, we'll get a really great output from that. So let me find Claude here. Okay, so I've got my project tab open, and we're going to start by creating a new project. I'm going to name this project BD Lead Qualification and Outreach. We want this name to be specific to the job to be done. Over time, we'll have a lot of projects here. And so you'll see now I'm working in Claude Desktop. You could do this in Claude.ai as well. And you'll see on the side, I have this projects tab. But this is what it looks like within the project itself. I have this chat window that you're probably used to working on. And on the side here, I have instructions, memory, and context. So that's what we're going to work on next. I'm going to start by adding some custom instructions here. So this is where we provide a lot of um, the background of the role that Claude's playing in this case and what we expect it to do and how we expect it to behave. So in this project, our instructions are you are the business development assistant for Meridian Advisory. This is just a made up company for this demo. It is a $50 million professional services firm that helps mid-market B2B companies with operations and technology advisory. You support the head of business development. Your standing jobs are to qualify inbound leads, draft outreach and replies, and prep discovery calls. We want to always reference the ICP profile when assessing fit, match our pricing framing, keep drafts concise, and we never want to open an email with, I hope this finds you well, or similar filler. We never want to promise a specific price before scope's understood. We never want to use M dashes. This is just a common AI tell. And we never want to oversell a weak fit lead. So we can sell those instructions and we can, come back and edit them at any time, but that's the instructions for our project. And now I'm gonna upload a few documents. Nick, while I upload these documents, you want to just give like an overview or tips around the types of documents to upload here?
Sure. There is a strategy around the documents you upload, and it's largely informed by the size of the documents. So, plain text documents, think text files, JSON, Markdown, CSV, those tend to be the sweet spot because there's no conversion needed. You upload those, and Claude can read them directly. Something like a PDF document that may contain images that requires a little bit of processing. It absolutely works fine, but there are some constraints. So if your PDF document is less than 100 pages, Claude will process both the text and embedded images within. But if you have a large PDF over 1,000 pages, it's only going to process the text in there and it will ignore images. Microsoft Office docs are text conversion only, and that's something that's important to keep in mind. So if you upload a Word document and it has embedded images, it's not going to read those. So the rule of thumb is if you're able to use text or Markdown when possible for maximum fidelity and efficiency.
Cool. Thank you. And so I've uploaded a few documents here. I have a company overview, an ICP profile, a pricing overview, and then a key piece here. I did sample outreach emails. So this can be a bit of an unlock that where Claude will learn the tone of the type of emails that we like to send, and it will match that. You can see in these documents, none of them are massive, but we've used, I would say, probably far less than 1% of the project capacity. So you can throw tons of materials into these projects. And now we will test qualifying a lead in this project. So all I have to do is say, qualify this inbound lead and draft a response. And I'll paste in some information here and we'll send it off. So what I did was just paste in some information from an inbound lead. You can imagine like we just got this lead through our website's contact form. It's for Dana Whitfield, the VP of Operations at Kestrel Components, a little information about their company, and then the email message itself. So we're 14 months into replacing our legacy ERP, and we're badly behind. The original go live was Q1. It's now slipped to Q3. Let's see, our PE sponsor is asking hard questions. I need someone senior who can come in, tell me honestly where this actually stands. Budget isn't the issue. If you can get us there, I can move quickly. Who can I talk to? So we'll see now we got a response. Before diving too much into this response, I want to come back here to our custom instructions. And we'll see in the standing jobs, we said when we're qualifying inbound leads against our ICP profile, for every lead, return a fit rating of strong, moderate, or weak with a one-line reason. Name which trigger situation, if any, is present, and whether there's a budget path. So that's what we should expect to see in this response. And so the fit rating here is strong. Our one-line reason, textbook ICP match on every axis with a name, budget, path, and urgency. We have some more details here. This is as close to a perfect fit inbound as they come. And then we have our draft reply. You can see it doesn't really have some of those classic AI tells like M dashes. It's a pretty concise email draft here. It leverages those sample email responses that we have, and I can now, copy and paste this and send this off in an email response to Dana here. And you can also see it also cues me, do you want me to prep the discovery call once you've got a time? So it did a really good job qualifying this lead and drafting a response as we requested. Let's imagine now that some time has gone on and Dana got back to us and wants to schedule a call. So now we can test this prep a discovery call against this project. So what I'm going to do now is make a new chat, prep me for this discovery call. And I'll put in some information here and send this off. So again, these are what would be considered not great prompts outside of a project. Prep me for this discovery call does not provide most of what's in this RCTFC framework. But because we have this project background, we'll get a much more tailored response to what we would expect. So this is just some information on the same um, inbound lead that we just had. So it's a discovery call with Kestrel components. It's going to be Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern. It's going to be with Dana Whitfield and Ray Okafor, who's the CFO. It describes their situation around their ERP replacement being off track, what they think they want, what we'd likely to propose, just some kind of background information. Again, I'm going to come back to our instructions here. When we prep discovery calls, it says, when I give you a meeting brief, return 3 points to raise, 2 questions to ask, the likely objections with suggested responses, and the single outcome to aim for on the call. So we'll see that framework is reflected here. The single outcome to aim for is to walk away with verbal agreements to a paid systems assessment as the next step, not the full rollout. If Ray leaves the call believing a short fixed fee diagnostic is the lowest risk way to find out where they really stand, you've won. We have our 3 points to raise. We have our 2 questions to ask here, and likely objections with responses that we can provide. So again, we're seeing that with just our little bit of information, again, we used less than 1% of our project capacity for context, and we just have some pretty basic instructions. We're able to get pretty great responses here that can save us a lot of time. This is specific, obviously, to this use case, but you could see creating projects for all sorts of different things, like vendor management, master agreements, SLAs, security, questionnaire, triage, really can be anywhere. Um, so I'm going to transition now to talking a bit about automations and workflows. This is going to build on projects, and we'll cover this in more detail in the subsequent sessions, but we're going to introduce it now. When you think about workflow candidates and the types of work that you do day to day, you want to think about tasks that are recurring. So maybe you do them weekly, monthly, quarterly. The more often you do it, the higher payoff you'll get in your ROI. You want them to follow a similar pattern, so the same steps, but just with different inputs. They likely involve data or documents. They have a consistent expected output format, and they kind of take longer than they should. So these might be things like weekly status reports or client updates or pipeline reviews or meeting prep packets, that sort of thing. In general, the anatomy of a workflow has these core components. You have the inputs. These are the things that are going to change every time, like this week's data. You have your instructions. These are the things that are going to stay the same every time. So the format, the metrics, the structure, the audience, the tone, these all live in your project. And then you have the output. So this is what your finished product should look like, and you want to make sure to define that. The analogy here that we'll use is to think of this like running payroll. You'll have timesheets that are different for every pay period, but the process of turning timesheets into paychecks never changes. So your project instructions are the payroll process. The week's data is the timesheets, and then Claude and it just takes over and um, runs that process. There are a few different levels of automation that we'll talk about here. Level one is what we're doing here. These are repeatable prompts, so you can just uh, initiate it, and the thinking and formatting all happens automatically. The next level beyond this are scheduled tasks. So you can run these workflows on a schedule. These can be daily briefings or weekly roundups, morning inbox triage. You just set it once and it'll run automatically. The rule of thumb here is that Claude can schedule anything it can gather on its own. So this could be web research or connectors that we'll talk about in later sessions. But if the inputs are files that only you can provide, you need to stay in the loop and you're kind of back at level one. So the more you can kind of automate or get to Claude being able to self-service, the more you can work within these scheduled tasks. And I can follow up with some information on this after the session. And then finally, there's the research mode where Claude becomes more of a systematic investigator where it can conduct multiple searches that build on each other. It can build comprehensive cited reports in, a number of minutes, and you can just, leave it to go do its work and come back. This could be competitive analysis or market research or vendor evaluation. And again, I can follow up with more of this information later on. But for now, let's move into our second demo here. In this demo, we're going to build a weekly ops report where we can upload some files and just ask it to compile the report. We'll switch over to projects here. You can see I have my project. So if I wanted to go back here and qualify another lead, I could just do that. But in this case, I'm going to create a new project. This is going to be called Weekly Operations Report. And I've got my instructions that I want to add here. Just grab them. So I'll add these instructions. You are the operations reporting assistant for Northwind Systems, a B2B professional services firm with approximately 180 employees and $30 million in annual revenue. Every Monday, you'll receive 3 data files: revenue and sales, operational metrics, financial snapshot. Your job is to compile these into a single weekly operations report for the leadership team. And then we have a report structure that we ask it to follow exactly. So this will have an executive summary, a revenue and sales section, operations, financial health, red flags only if applicable, and recommended discussion topics that we should see that in the output that we get. And then it has some formatting rules that it will apply as well. So in this case, I'm not going to have context. Of course, you could have context with historical data and whatever else you wanted, but for the sake of this demo, I'm just going to bring some files in directly, if it'll let me. Okay, so these are just a few CSV files. These could be Excel files, but they are just the financial snapshot, the operational metrics, and the revenue and sales. So you can imagine I went to, QuickBooks or wherever this data exists and downloaded the data that I want to compile into this uh, weekly operations report. And I can just say, here's this week's data. Please compile the weekly operations report. In future sessions, we'll cover how you could use things like connectors so that you could remove the step of having to download this information and then upload it. And at that point, we can move to that level two of the automation where we could set this to automatically run every Monday morning or wherever we want, whenever we wanted to, and that data would get pulled in directly. In this case, we're just going to take the manual step here. So we'll see now we've got our weekly operations report. The executive summary is at the top. This business is in solid shape. Operations are running ahead of every target and average deal size jumped sharply. Bookings came in below target and below last week, so sales momentum is the one area to watch. Cash dipped slightly and the oldest receivables grew, but overall financial health remains stable. So we've got our 2 to 3 sentence executive summary, followed by our revenue and sales section, operations, financial health. We have a few red flags to look out for, and we've got 3 recommended discussion topics. So it did the project's job here. We could now imagine like another week goes by and we want to do the same thing. We want to generate another weekly operations report. We can just drag in new files here. So these are titled the same thing, but this is actually new data. And again, we can say, here's this week's data. Please compile the weekly operations report. And this will follow the same process. So we're still having a manual step here, but where this may have taken me hours every Monday morning and been something I don't really look forward to every morning, I can now dramatically reduce the time that that takes. And my mental capacity can be more geared towards like, what do we do with this data? How do we work with these with this output? What should the strategy be? And do more of the work that requires a human versus the churning out these reports. So again, we'll see that same format. The executive summary, the business had a rough week. Bookings fell well short of target and both deal size and win rate slipped. Operations are strained with ticket backlog response times and at-risk projects all rising while utilization dropped below target. Cash is still healthy, but aging receivables and climbing DSO need attention now. So the same format, new data, and we're able to monitor the business over time or give the leadership team exactly what they need each week with their uh, discussion topics included there. Okay. So a common, before I get into this piece, I've touched on this a little bit, but like a common question is like, could this just run by itself? And not right now, given how that it needs to run. Um, I still need to upload these documents. That's the only reason why I can't make this a scheduled task that runs, a scheduled workflow. But we'll see over time. I think it's session 4, so 2 sessions from now, where we'll come back to this with connectors that will pull this data straight in, and we won't need to upload the files. We'll just fetch it itself, and we'll show how to make this more of a level 2 um, automation. Getting into the ROI, it's a pretty simple calculation here, but it is one that is uh, surprisingly left out in a lot of the AI strategy and implementation work that we've seen done by other companies, and so we just wanted to call this out explicitly. But you want to just be thinking about AI initiatives as time saved by your team. And so the report that we just worked on, let's say that's done by a manager, and it takes them 3 hours every Monday to get that work done. Um, with 50 weeks, that's 150 hours per year per manager. If their salary is roughly $100 an hour, fully loaded, then you're talking around $15,000 per manager per year that you save just on this one very simple workflow. So if you've got, plant, five plant manufacturer where you have a manager of each one, you're now looking at $75,000 a year. So again, it's a very simple template. Um, but this is really where that ROI comes from. It's just hours saved per role times the loaded labor cost times the number of people running the same workflow. And this is where you can get the big wins. You just look for where's the biggest impact here. So with that, we will get into some Q&A. Feel free to send some through the chat. We've got a few lined up. Let me just pull these up real quick. Um, let's see. Nick, I'll pass we'll talk about these. We've got how many documents can I upload to a project first?
There's no cap on the file count in projects, but file size cannot exceed 30 megabytes. And then once a project hits about 150,000 words, Claude begins indexing those records using RAG. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in future sessions. And this is across a project, not a document. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just it impacts the efficiency of the queries. But once it goes into RAG, the limit's very large. So you're at about 1.5 million words is where you max out in a project in terms of all of your documents. Uh, and then once Claude hits that 150K word mark and goes into RAG, like the retrieval is really efficient. But like I said earlier, it's not going to be as accurate because it's attempting to find relevant chunks, searching through those documents versus being able to scan all of those documents at once.
All right, next up, can my whole team use the same project?
That's going to be plan dependent, but yeah, when you're on the team and enterprise plans and a user has view, edit, owner permissions on that project, whole team has access, and we use that extensively at our company, where we might have different departments collaborate on different areas of the project, and there's different levels even within the team plans for different users. So I'd highly recommend if your team's standardizing on Claude to go with the team plan versus the individual accounts, mostly for the collaboration feature.
Great. What if my information changes?
You can update the documents and instructions at any time. Like Mike showed, just like swap out last quarter's pricing for this quarter's. These projects evolve with your business, so it's very simple and expected that you'll need to upload new documents or make modifications to the instructions.
And this is a bit of a tricky one, but what if our data format changes week to week?
Claude's pretty flexible and is usually smart about that. So if you have a subtle column change, it can usually figure that out. But I would recommend adding notes to your instructions. So if the label for revenue changed to total revenue, I would go ahead and change that. For big structural changes, like you're adding new columns or omitting some, I would update your instructions so that it's aware and it doesn't have to figure that out. It's going to just produce more consistent results.
Can Claude pull data directly from our systems?
In the standard interface, you upload files manually, which takes about 30 seconds. But in future sessions, we're going to get in the connectors and integrations. And once you have that configured, then Claude will be able to pull from those data sources directly.
All right, last one here. How do I justify this ROI to a board, a CFO, or a PE sponsor?
I think Mike's slide mimics how we typically approach this conversation. I mean, it'll vary depending on what you're trying to quantify, but keep it simple when you're able to. So we like to first start with like hours saved per cycle times cycles per year times the number of people running the workflow and then their loaded hourly costs. And then add risk reduction as a separate line. And Mike touched upon this earlier, but there's a metric that's thrown around a lot where 59% of mid-market companies see little ROI from AI, and they typically don't start with this step, and it's very easy and it's really helpful.
Yeah. And like you touched on, there's a couple things outside of ROI. Like you wouldn't want to make the decision purely on the ROI projections, like Nick called out risk reduction. So what's what's the risk of AI getting something wrong? Or like change management, how likely are the people on my team to actually do this once it's been built? But the ROI calculation is a big component of it. All right, well, that's going to wrap up our session for this week. I would encourage everybody here to build one project around a recurring task and give it a whirl. Add some context documents there, and I'll be following up with some materials to help folks out. We're also offering a consult to anyone in the cohort here. If there's anything that we can be helping you with, or you want a second set of eyes on anything, just feel free to reach out, and we'll schedule some time with you. Uh, in our next session, which is on July 28th, we will get into some more advanced topics around like really building stuff and generating artifacts and using skills. And finally, we'll wrap up with more holistic strategy and some of these connectors and more advanced topics. But since you're registered, you're in for all of them. The link will be the same to all of these. And we look forward to seeing you at the next one. Thanks so much for joining.